who's going to love me now? Now I am soiled goods. Now I am trash, and I can never get it back. I can never get my innocence back. There's going to be no good man that will love me, and there's going to be no nice women that'll want to be my friend. And so I would act out accordingly. I started working in the clubs where you didn't have to wear much, if anything at all. I trafficked myself because I had this belief about myself. Well, I've done it now. Now I really the garbage that I suspected I was all those years. Truly am that. And when you have that core belief, you live accordingly to that.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Greetings from Studio AA, deep in the heart of Texas. That was the voice of Hilary R.W. that you heard at the beginning of this here episode number 392, and you are going to hear so much more from Hilary in just a moment. But first things first, this here episode is made possible by Ian, Todd, Kurt, and Anonymous. And so you ask yourself exactly, what did Ian, Todd, Kurt, and Anonymous do? Well, they went by our humble little website, I must say, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little yellow donation tab, and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, Ian, Todd, Kurt, and Anonymous. This here episode is coming right out to you'uns. All right. Let's get right on into Miss Hilary R.W. And by the way, this is the first of 2 episodes. I'll probably remind you of that a couple times here because I want to make sure that you tune back in for next week's episode. This is part 1 of Hilary R.W. We're calling this one, Who's Gonna Love Me Now? And in listening to that opening audio clip, it may sound a bit disheartening. How come I can't pronounce that word? Disheartening, but that's why you need to be sure to tune in next week to part 2 of this story with Hilary. In part 1, we discuss Hilary's singing career, the abuse she endured as a child, and Hilary being trafficked as a minor. How Hilary at one point thought she was too young, too cute, and too smart to be an alcoholic. I love how Hilary has this quote during this interview. She calls she talks about the holy spigot, and I had never heard that term before. I absolutely love it. And she also says, a quote is, she says, victims can't stay sober. And she provides her thought on that and being able to forgive oneself and love oneself. And as a reminder, one more time, we'll have part 2 next week, so be sure to tune into that. But for right now, enjoy Hilary, and we will have plenty listener feedback at the end of this episode. Enjoy Hilary. Okay, everybody, so today we are sitting here, and I've been looking forward to this interview with Miss Hilary? Well, okay. So I'm going to have her introduce herself here in a second. We were just having a conversation about this. Is it Hilary R, Hilary R.W, Hilary W? So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and have you introduce yourself, give your sobriety date if you wish.
Okay.
And then tell people where you live in this great land of ours.
Okay. I'm going to introduce myself today as Hilary R.W. Sobriety date is May 9th of 1997. Ooh.
Do you hear? Yeah, just
she got past the gate.
okay. That's all right. Just
Sorry.
let her. So, just so everybody knows here, I have a dog. The dog's name is Maisie, and she absolutely loves Hilary.
And the feeling's mutual.
So now she is at the office door here, the studio door, and she wants to get through to talk to Hilary. And Hilary just noticed that she actually got through a little barricade that we had set up. But we're just going to try our best to ignore her. So anyway, getting back to Hilary R.W.
Yeah.
And May 9th of 1997?
Yes, sir.
And where do you live?
I live in Dallas, Texas.
Well, right near me.
Yes, sir.
That's why you could come over here. You know, a lot of these I record remotely with people who are not in the city, but I always like people that come over when they possibly can. All right, so just real quickly, the Hilary R.W, kind of explain that a little bit to us.
So I got married in September of 2023, and Hilary R is my maiden name. And I've just been trying to figure it out because legally I didn't change my name yet. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's Hilary W as my married name. So then I've just been trying to, is it Hilary W? Is it Hilary R.W? So lately it's been Hilary R.W. So we'll just attribute each of those R's, the R.W. and the W to different personalities. So we'll just... I'll just label those.
I'll go
but
with
for
that.
Today, we're with Hilary R.W.
That sounds great. And so, and part of I think you were saying before you started, I know that well, in fact, we were just talking about how you can't afford to get sick right now because you have a song to record. So you're a singing artist, a recording artist, right?
Yeah.
So tell us what you want to tell us about that. That's interesting.
Well, since we're going to be talking about the 12 steps and Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm not going to get into what my artist name is because I just very much respect their traditions. And I never want to, I never want to be a full representative, self-proclaimed representative of the beautiful program that saved my life. So that was part of my story, is that because of my alcohol and drug addiction, that I ruined my singing voice. I ruined 4 major record deals and I couldn't sing. And then as there's a whole story behind that about how that came back, if you ever want to ask me about it. But I was so scared to go for my dreams after my voice came back after about 1.5 years of sobriety, and I can explain that later too. But I was scared to go for my dreams because of the things I had walked through in my life, and I had so much shame. And I thought, if anybody ever finds this out, I can't let the world know that this happened and that I did this and all of this kind of stuff. And what happened is that everybody around me said, Hilary, you've got to do this. And I had some special friends that are across the pond in the UK, and they really encouraged me to get out and do stuff, invited me to come up there and do an event. And I started working with a producer. So now, that in 2017, I started working with a producer. 2018, we started releasing, and it's just been a miraculous journey. And I can say that, our perceptions can be so off because the things that I perceived about my age, about people's responses to my story, were so different than the negative view that my lower power tried to put on it.
Right.
So
just curious, when you sing, what kind of music do you sing?
Well, in the mainstream, I sing pop, adult contemporary, dance. but I've studied opera and I've sung show tunes and I've done love songs and a little bit of country. I'm not really a punker or a rap artist or a thrash metal gal. But yeah, but I appreciate all styles and I just love music.
So it sounds like you've been singing ever since you were small. That's what it sounds like.
Yes, besides the detours that alcoholism and drug addiction take us down. Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds cool. All right. So let's get into your story a little. Okay. Where do
Okay.
you want to start? So take me back, I guess, to begin. Talk a little bit about your childhood, where you came from. Did you grow up here in Dallas?
I did not. I grew up in Denver, Colorado. And, I want to first clarify to anybody that's listening that, I thought if you went through the things I went through as a child, you'd be an alcoholic too. I thought my childhood caused the disease of alcoholism, but I was so wrong. But I used the things that happened to me and the situations that I went through as excuses to drink. Of course, those were my causes and conditions, like the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book talks about. My parents got divorced when I was 2. My father was a rageaholic. My mother, really struggled, and it was a lot of chaos. And I ended up going to 13 different schools by the time I was in 8th grade.
Is that all within the Denver area?
Yeah, and it wasn't because my parents were in the military, because I know people have parents that were in the military or traveled for corporate reasons or whatever. No, this was because of all of this dysfunction.
Right.
And so I have an older brother and a younger half brother, but I had events that happened in my childhood where I was sexually abused and tortured by different perpetrators starting at age 3.
Oh my goodness.
And later on, I was trafficked at age 16. But let me back up a little bit. So then these were the things that really, really impacted. They did impact my life, but they did not make me an alcoholic. So my mother left when I was 8.5 for a time, and I didn't know when she was going to come back. My mom had gone through her own traumas as a little girl, and of course I couldn't have the compassion for her as I do now until I learned more about these things. But I was absolutely devastated by that. And like I said, my father was a rageaholic. He's an atheist. He's really, he has a lot of self-righteous stuff about his atheism. And
so real quick, so you said they divorced when you were 2.
Yes.
Did you spend much time with him after that?
Yes. Well, I spent time with my mother, and I was with her a lot. I saw him some. My father got remarried when I was 6, and I was very jealous of her because he was very kind to her. But I was, even as a grown up, my cousins and everybody told me, Hilary, he was always so much meaner to you. And he was. I mean, I wasn't crazy. But my father lost his mother when he was 3. And I think, and he was raised by nannies and then sent to boarding school. So he had his own abandonment issues. So it's, when my mom said, I can't deal with raising the kids right now, we went to live with him. And then she ended up after that deciding to leave to go live on a boat with this guy in the Caribbean. And it was because I said, when are you coming back? And she said, I don't know, basically. And it was very devastating. And the other thing is that, my father had gone to all different private schools and he hated them. There's a lot of things that he went through that he didn't like. And so they definitely wanted me in the public schools. And the public schools that I went to, I was a minority in them. So a lot of the people there were either African American, or some of the schools it was more Latino. Some of the schools I had friends that were, they were Asian American. But the thing is that I despised my skin color. I like if to describe myself to people that are listening, I have red hair, light skin, freckles, and I hated all of that and I hated my name. And I think that I took a lot of the volatility that was going on around me and I really just turned it on myself.
So talk about that a little bit more. Like, okay, you didn't like your skin color. And is that because you were a minority, or is it just because of because of who you were? Or?
I think that so I think I didn't feel precious. I didn't feel pretty. I didn't feel lovable. I didn't feel loved. You know, it was, yeah. And I went to these schools where these women were so beautiful. Like I wanted to have that beautiful dark melanin skin and have that exotic look like my friends had. And I wanted to, or the caramel of that my Latina friends had, or, the beautiful, the girls that I knew, like we took karate and Japanese karate, and those women had the most beautiful skin. And I was in my sensei's wedding, and I just remember the beautiful outfits and their beautiful smooth skin. And it was funny because I just wanted that. I thought if I had that, I would be okay. And that was what a lot of my life was about fantasizing not being here in this moment. If I have this, I'm going to be okay. If I have this, I'm going to be okay. And bless my parents' hearts, they did the best they could. And let me tell you, they weren't all bad. My parents were brilliant, just very smart people, very articulate. I'm a girl that had an 8th grade education until I got my GED and went back and did some college as a grown up. But a lot of my speech is because of my parents. My mother introduced me to opera and classical, which I didn't appreciate opera until I studied it later on, and I used to tease her about it. My dad introduced me to blues and jazz and Shakespeare, and they would take me to musicals and the symphony and these chorales. And the other thing I did was I'd watch old movies with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and part of my first addiction was fantasy. And I thought one day I'm going to get married like my mother's parents, and we're going to sing along the street like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and he's going to lay his coat down, and I'm going to marry one man. We're going to have kids and grandkids, and then we're going to die on the same day.
On the same day.
Yeah. Like, we won't be without each other. It's like, so, but I would get so lost in that. And when I was 10, they took me, well, my mom was gone, but my dad took me to see the play Annie.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know I could sing, but I loved like Barbra Streisand, and I loved I had watched Funny Girl, and I was just like enamored with her. And I leave that show, and all of a sudden I'm singing the song Tomorrow every day.
Yeah.
And I discovered that I can sing.
Nice. And you have the red hair?
I do. I have the red hair. And so I'm singing every day. I discover I have this voice. So then I start doing more songs. I start doing talent shows. I start doing commercials and all kinds of stuff. And I'm making really great money as a little kid. But
how old were you then? Would you
10,
say? 10,
11, 12.
So what was going on with that money? Do you know?
Well, yeah, I was making about $500 a week.
Wow, for a 10-year-old,
it was.
Back then, that's great.
I bought my first Atari computer. Remember the Atari 400?
Yeah.
I bought my own computer, and that was a lot of fun. But what was great about that for me at the time, and that is I did it to escape me. Like today I sing for different reasons, and we can talk about that too, but I could be somebody else. I could say different words, and I could be in that fantasy world. Mm-hmm. And I could escape everything that was going on with me, because see, what was going on with me, and I think about page 52 of the Bedevilments, and how I was just not okay. And I had a head full of knowing what you thought about me, which was never good. And I had a head full of crazy town and it just wouldn't shut up. It's like the neighbor that plays the music you can't stand so loud and you can't get them to turn it off. They won't answer the door. You can't sleep. It's just all these negative thoughts, and that you could see my unlovability. You could see my ugliness. You could see how I didn't have value. You could see what I was feeling with that cannon-sized blast of anxiety going through my gut where I just couldn't take my breath. I just couldn't take my breath. And, you know, I found somewhat of a solution in music and in performance and in watching those shows and school even. But school became hard later on because more traumas happened. You know, I was abused in the church and then abused by my best friend's dad. And I just, all these things started happening. And mom had come back about the time I was 11. And
So you were living with your dad at that
I
time when you were
was.
doing the singing engagements and stuff like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then also when mom came back, I was singing, still doing stuff when she came back. And
And listen, I don't want to go too deep in this.
no, it's
I don't
okay.
want to make this sensationalized, but you've talked about being abused several times, and I know that is a lot of trauma. Did you realize at the time you were being abused? Like, what was going on in your head at that time?
Well,
You see, even the church, I mean, you're getting it from all ends.
yeah. Well, the interesting thing is I didn't remember the episode when I was 5 until I was 19. That I didn't remember the episode from when I was 3 until I was 21. But I knew the other things that happened when I was 8 and 12 and 13 and 14, all these things. So I did tell my dad when this happened. I told my mom and my dad looked at me and he said I was a liar and I was making it up and I was a drama queen and that I just wanted attention. It was totally devastating to me. And, it was almost more devastating than the abuse. And then for one of the abusers, we went to court for one of the abusers, which was my best friend's dad. And
how old were you when you
12.
went to court?
Oh, 12. And he had molested he had molested 3 12-year-old girls and he got a year probation. And the state of Colorado sent my mother $2.99 restitution.
Oh my God.
And she told me about it. She was so mad about it. And I probably shouldn't have known any of that, because it just, but I was getting angrier and angrier. And for the people out there that wonder, how is it that didn't make me an alcoholic? Well, I know people that have been severely abused and did not, when they took a drink, the drink didn't take them and they didn't end up in the places I did, doing the things I did. They might have done other things, but an alcoholic, the thing is that when I got my first sponsor and then my current sponsor, they were raised the exact way I thought I should have been raised. Parents that stayed married, went to all the same schools. One of them went to all private schools. They were cherished. They were loved. They never had any abuse happen to them. They had everything happen the way I thought I deserved. And guess what? They took the drink took them, and they ended up in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's what happens for us. That's what happens for people like you and me. And so after that, I'll tell you this, that's where I was wavering, started really wavering in school. Like I was really getting restless, irritable, discontent. And I remember I was repeating the 8th grade because I just, I'd gone from doing great in school to not doing great at all. Had to repeat the 8th grade, which was humiliating. So I go to this little gathering at one of my friend's houses, and her older sister and the older girls bring out a bottle of tequila. And they're like, "Hey, Hilary, do you want some of this?" Well, I was never going to drink. I used to break my mother's cigarettes up because I was never going to smoke. I was going to save myself for marriage. Well, more than anything, I wanted to be included. And I was like, why, yes, I do. And I was very insecure. I was like, oh my God, what are they thinking? What are they thinking? That whole thought process. Oh my God, blah, 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 ad nauseum with the thoughts. And they pour that first shot of tequila and I throw it back. I cough. They laugh. I laugh with them to be cool. I do the second shot, which is a little easier, still some coughing. They laugh. I laugh. I'm going to be cool. Third shot, fourth shot, 8, 9 shots later. And baby, it happened. And I had that spiritual awakening from, I call it the holy spigot.
Right.
And I always make a joke that my name turned from Hilary to Distillery because I wanted to feel that way for the rest of my life.
Hilary to Distillery.
Yeah. I mean, and that was at 14 and a half. And I remember all of a sudden I had that false pride come in. All of a sudden it was like I could conquer the world. And I thought, you know what? These girls are really smart to invite me to their little party. And you know what? I'm actually kind of cute. I might even look like Maureen O'Hara or Anne Margaret. And then I'm like, you know what? I need to teach these girls how to dance because the year before, my girlfriends, so these are my Latina friends and my African American friends, the year before had taught me how to dance. Now, it took me 3 months to catch the beat. Look, Whitey over here couldn't catch the beat. And so, but then I caught the beat and it was like, yay. And then so then that arrogance came in, like, oh, I need to teach these girls how to dance. And they were really smart to invite me after the 9 shots of tequila. And so, and that's alcohol gave me courage. There's a reason they call it liquid courage. And it is a spirit. And it gave me that spirit. It gave me that solution that shut my brain up from all the insecurities to where I can do this. And I don't care what you think. And I'm amazing. Just ask me. And I nearly died trying to feel that way the rest of my life, but so I'm 14 and a half. I was put into adolescent treatment at 15, like barely turning 15. Mm. So I'm that kind of alcoholic. It wasn't like, let me social drink. I was out from the gate like a racehorse. And I said everything they wanted to hear in that treatment center for the 2 months I was there. But I really thought I was too young, too cute, and too smart to be an alcoholic. Later on I was I was just a mess. And so I ended up, saying all the things they wanted to hear. I was entering that 9th grade. I would go to school. I was bringing back straight A's and I'd ask, I was really looking for that validation from my dad who could not give it to me. And I wanted him to make a huge deal about my straight A's and he'd be like, that's nice. What's for dinner? And so I was just angry. I was angry at him. I was angry at how nice he was to my stepmom and why wasn't he nice like that to me? And my brother at this time was out of the house and going to college. And
so you're his only daughter, right?
I am.
And for whatever reason, that validation wasn't coming.
It wasn't.
Just to show you how important that relationship between daughters and their father are. I mean, with any parent empathy, but in this case, since they were separated and such. How did he treat your other? You said you had a younger stepbrother, I believe,
yeah,
and
he's
an older.
19 years younger. Yeah, he's better to the guys. And I just, but I know they have had their own stuff with my dad. Mm-hmm. With our dad, I should say. But our dad, his mother died. She had red hair too. My dad has red hair. She died. She died at 33. She had pneumonia and the kids got chicken pox and it went into her lungs. All the medicines were being used for World War II and it went into her lungs and it killed her within 3 days. And they were a well-to-do family. But they couldn't get it. They couldn't even get it. And it was devastating to my father and my aunt. And, I have such compassion for that today because a son needs his mother too.
Right.
And I had a lot of self-pity and a lot of resentment over the things I walked through. And if I stayed in that, victims can't stay sober. We can get sober, but we can't stay sober. Because it comes back to that pour me another drink. In our book, it says to watch out. What's the first thing? Is it watch out for self-pity? I have to really watch that. Yes, I was victimized. Yes, things happened. Things happened to my parents too. And I really believe, that they did the best they could. They really did. Now, I didn't believe that for a long time. And it's taken me doing the work. Later on getting outside help. I had to get outside help for my trauma. I had to. And, these were the things I was never going to talk about. I was never going to talk about the abuses. I was never going to talk about the fact that I threw my virginity away because I got drunk. It was right after I started drinking at 14 and a half, and I just threw it away. But then I remember working at age 16 at Dairy Queen. And these people came in and they said they were husband and wife. They wanted to help my career. I had a very bad feeling about them. Somewhere deep down, I knew they were bad. I knew they were bad, but you learn to ignore that when you go through things. And I was a kid, for heaven's sakes. And even though I thought I was grown at 16, but they said, we're going to go out of state and we're going to help your career. And they took me out of state, and that's not what happened. I ended up getting trafficked on the streets, almost dying over and over again, jumping out of moving cars. I remember there was a jacket I had, a new jacket I'd gotten, and that particular person in the car grabbed the coat and I slipped out of it and jumped out of the moving car. And I was literally barely 16. And I wasn't thinking at the time, because I wasn't thinking things through. I didn't really know how to protect myself, I guess. In some ways I felt I did, but again, I just thought I was so smart and I didn't trust people and I'm going to survive on my own. And I had a lot of ideas that were definitely not of God, and definitely, I see where they come from now. And so one day, out of all the girls, he beat up that wife of his, and quote unquote, and beat her to a pulp. And he would not let us take her to the hospital. And it was crazy because we begged him. And the other thing that he had told me, so I knew I needed to get out of there. The other thing he told me, because he knew where my mom lived, he said, don't you ever tell them that you're underage. Don't you ever tell them. And so I remember I got picked up and they knew I was underage. But I wouldn't, it's not like it is now where a lot of stuff, is on file or whatever, but they tried to figure it out, but they finally just had to release me because I kept sticking to my story. I was way too scared. They're like, you can tell us, we'll help you. And I knew they couldn't help me. That's how it was very scary.
When you went off the reservation, so to speak, and you crossed state lines and all that, were people looking for you?
No. No. So that's to the next part of the story, which is a little bit of time passed. I want to say probably a week, but it's hard to remember. It gets a little hazy. He knew my parents didn't speak, and I told him, I went to him and I didn't think that he could put me 6 feet under, which just dawned on me in the last 2 years. Like, he could have done that. Like, I didn't think about that till within the last 2 years. I said to him that my parents had been talking to one another and they called the FBI and they're looking for me. And he said to me, get out of my face. You're not worth my trouble. And I was able to catch a bus home. But he could have just killed me, right?
Yeah.
He could have just killed me. And why I didn't think of that until 2 years ago is just beyond me. But that is, again, delusion. I have to be so careful of getting in places of delusion or trusting my own perceptions. That is why I need the we of the program. That is why I need a closed mouth understanding friend that is my sponsor, that can guide me, and others that I trust, that I know have my back and that I have their back. But that's a we deal. So after that, so what happened for me? And I'm going to tell you some other stuff, some blessings that have come around this. This has been a long journey for me. It's been a long journey. I would not talk about the state that this happened in. I wouldn't talk
When you
about
say
the
the
city.
state, the actual.
Yeah, where I was taken.
Okay, gotcha.
I wouldn't talk about it. So I had to go to Arizona this fall, which I've been in Arizona before when I went to trauma treatment, but let me tell you how it's different for me now. In the last year or two, I can't remember exactly the timeline, I've also been talking about where it happened, because I wouldn't. And I'm 27 years sober.
And what do you think the reason was you weren't talking about where it happened?
Because I was still carrying the shame.
Gotcha.
Still, it takes, like, it's been a process. It has not been, okay, boom, there's a big event, but it's been like, and it surprised me too, because I'm like, you've really done all this work. But I called Tucson, and I haven't heard back from them yet, but I'm going to call in a favor I've sung for the police chief in one of our counties here, and I'm going to see if he'll call over to the chief and see if they'll help me with this. But it's been a long time ago, but I want to give them my fingerprints. I don't know what name. I don't know what name I gave them. I don't know what birth date. I know it was over the age, but I'd like to pay to find those mugshots and find out where I was arrested as that 16-year-old it's like I'm bringing her home, so to speak. And it's miraculous. It says in our book, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, they will always materialize if we work for them. And I promise, there's been times in my sobriety that I wanted to drink, and then I wanted to die, more die than drink, and it's been like 4 times in my sobriety, 4 certain times. And I'm so glad I didn't take myself out like different friends of mine have, or go back out, because I would miss all of this. I would miss the miracles of coming back to being able to love myself, and forgive myself. I can tell you, my life has been a lot of miracles. It's been a lot of upward work. My first 6 years of sobriety, which we'll get to that, I had nightmares every night from the trauma I endured. I woke up screaming and crying every single night. And I would go to meetings, 1, 2, 3 meetings a day. But I remember when they talk about HALT, I would not sleep. I wouldn't. And I begged my sponsor at the time to please, I need some kind of medication. And she said, I'm going to send you to someone who specializes in alcoholism, who's a psychiatrist. And she's like, because I'm not a doctor and I cannot tell you. And she did. And he said, you're more emotional than most, but there's nothing I can give you. I'm like, thanks a lot. Now make me feel more unique. But we'll come back to that. But yeah, so after that, then it was like this fantasy of that I'm going to marry that one guy. Now, who's going to love me now? Now, I am soiled goods. Now, I am trash, and I can never get it back. I can never get my innocence back. There's going to be no good man that will love me. And there's going to be no nice women that'll want to be my friend. And so I would act out accordingly. I started working in the clubs where you didn't have to wear much, if anything at all. I trafficked myself. Because I had this belief about myself. Well, I've done it now. Now I really am the garbage that I suspected I was all those years. Now I am. Truly am that. And when you have that core belief, you live accordingly to that.
Hilary, I am getting a little verklempt myself.
I'm
listening to
sorry.
you.
Am I being too emotional? Okay.
You're not being too emotional at all. I
Okay.
absolutely love it. But here's what we're going to do, okay?
Yeah.
Obviously, I want to continue on with this.
Sure.
We need to get the second part of this.
Let's do.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you we'll just go take a little break here.
Okay.
And then we'll come back and we'll get the second part of your story. Are you okay with that?
I'm fabulous with it.
Okay. God bless you. What I always do, actually, is I read page 164 from the book to close out an episode. So we're going to do that right now. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past, which was what you've done. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us, like me and Hilary, as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you for joining me today, Hilary.
Thank you for the honor and
We'll
privilege.
come back and get the second part of your story soon, okay?
Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much for joining me, Miss Hilary. And as I said on the beginning of this episode, be sure to tune in next week to Hilary R.W. Part 2. Now remember, folks, we do not want you sharing your toothbrush, but we would absolutely love for you to share this episode with another friend or family member. It may be just what they need today. So go ahead and pause your device, click that little share button and get it on over to them. And remember, I never say this, but I should start saying it more often, what are you supposed to do? I think you're supposed to like and give a review on whatever podcast player you're listening to. Apparently that helps in the ratings, or don't. It's really up to you. You can do whatever you want. Now on to a little bit of listener feedback. Suzanne writes in, and she was responding to our one and only David G., who had written her an email. And I just got the biggest kick out of this response, so I just thought I'd read it on the air. And she says to David, "Hi, David. Thanks for responding to me. I got a kick out of John's sense of humor and his love for the AA fellowship. As we say, we are not a glum lot. I listened to your talk," and she's talking to David, "on sponsorship and love your approach with sponsees, especially step 8, and to help them understand the damage they cause themselves while harming others. I am working with a girl right now that had 10 years sober. Now, in the last few years, she has been in and out of the room several times. Recently, she stayed sober for 52 days while calling and or texting me every day. She stopped before her 4th step and picked up a drink again. She got depressed and called me again and told me that she wasn't drinking but not taking my suggestions, and was lying to me like she was taking suggestions. She was very remorseful and wanted to start the steps over. That lasted just a few days, and then she was off again. My sponsor is related to her by marriage and says that the girl has a huge ego problem and reminded me that I stayed sober while working the steps with the girl. That's right. Anyway, thanks for sharing your experience, strength, and hope, David. I love hearing your perspectives and others' perspectives working on the steps. These podcasts, Sober Speak, are gold to me. We have a small fellowship in my area and a few meetings. So the podcast, we have a small fellowship in my area and very few meetings. So the podcast helped me to stay connected to other alcoholics every day. Thank you for your time, Suzanne L. Well, once again, Suzanne L., thank you for writing in. Scott writes in, and this one's called episode 386. Actually, he says he uses the proper podcast language. He says EP 386. That's really cool, Scott. I like you there, man. Mr. EP 386. Anyway, Scott says, good afternoon, John. I hope the weather is better in Dallas than it is in Arkansas, where I live. We are on the lookout for a big boat full of animals. Laugh out loud. Get it, everybody. Noah's Ark. Anyway, he says, I just listened to episode 386 with Brent, and I would love to reach out to him. He is from Southwest Missouri, and I am from Northeast Oklahoma. If you look at a map, John, you will see that those two state corners are neighbors. I now live in Northwest Arkansas, so I haven't strayed very far, I think is what he's saying. Anyhow, I can be reached at, and he gave me his number and then the email. Thank you very much. And so, as you know, Mr. Scott, I went ahead and copied Brent H. on your email, and I will get out of the way and let you guys take it from there. All right, everybody. That there is another episode number 392. Is that what I said? Yeah, I think it's 392 in the books of Sober Speak. If you're not following us on Instagram, we're at Sober Speak, all one word. If you're not in the super secret Facebook group, go ahead and look us up on the Facebook application. Look for Sober Speak Secret Group. Ask for admission into the group, and we will get you on in there. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. I take this 1 week at a time. I hope to be back next week with everybody. In the meantime, may God bless you and keep you until then. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye, everybody.